Hello and good afternoon. I'm Carly Berger, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 19th session of Lunching with Leaders. Thank you all for so much for joining us. We love seeing all your faces week after week. Let's take care of some housekeeping items first. You've all been muted, so please stay muted for the duration of the call. We'll stop for questions along the way. You can use the chat feature down below to send your questions to me, and I'll read them out when we stop. At the end, if we have time, we'll open it up for questions that you might want to ask our special guest yourself. And on that, I'm going to hand it over to Art Friedman. Go ahead, Art.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Carly. I really appreciate it. And before we kick this off, I just want to thank Carly and Kurt Gandolfo for all that they do to make Lunching with Leaders possible, because without them, this doesn't happen. And for sure, without Jeremy on the line, it doesn't happen as well. And we're anxious to get started. But check it out, Jeremy. I also wanted to mention that Jim Copeland is on the line right now, and he's in Ireland. And I'm not sure whether we do any Traeger business in Ireland, man.
I don't think we do.
Jim, come on, man. What's going on? Let's make it happen.
They'd have to come fitted with a roof, Art.
That's okay. Okay. Anyway, welcome, Jeremy. And thank you so much for joining us today, man. You can't imagine how much we appreciate this. And we're looking forward to hearing from you. And without further ado, man, let's just go ahead and jump right in. So tell us, if you would, where you were born and maybe a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, sure. So was born in the Midwest, grew up in Minneapolis. When I was 10 years old, grew up in a little small town, Minneapolis, or in Minnesota, about an hour from Minneapolis. When I was 10, moved to the Midlands of England. And so from small town to experiencing Europe, very eye-opening experience, and traveled around a lot there, and sort of moved around a lot. Went to junior high in Boston, high school in Washington, D.C. But I would say one of the things that defined me early on is, I was gritty. I was an entrepreneur. I didn't know how to say that word then, but I was always looking for ways to build a business, to make money. I bought a lawnmower when I was 7 years old, and I started cutting people's lawns in my neighborhood in Minnesota. When I was 8, my older sister and I got a paper route. And boy, Minnesota at 4:30 in the morning in the winter, turns out it's chilly. And it's all I knew. And so we were out the door at 4:30, stuffing papers, put him in this cart that we'd pull around the neighborhood. And I have a lot of really great memories. And part of it, it's that I grew up in a home where my dad worked really hard. And so I had that example, and we didn't have a lot of money. And so, if I wanted something, I earned it. And so I kind of grew up just doing gritty things. And I've only once had a job that paid me hourly, and I hated it. It's like the thought of just like sitting there waiting for the hours to, and it was a very boring job too, waiting for the hours to tick by so that I could trade time in a seat for what was then $5 an hour. Just felt like a bad trade. And so, I've always looked for opportunities to build, and that's kind of what my career has become about. As an entrepreneur, it wasn't straight. It was a windy road, and I did all sorts of stuff. But I think this great foundation of being willing to do hard things prepared me for being an entrepreneur, which I know there are a lot of entrepreneurs on here. Being an entrepreneur is hard. It's like some days you feel like everything's going great. You can do no wrong. And then 2 hours later, it's like, it's the depths of is this business going to survive? And it's an emotional roller coaster. But I think like the grit of learning to face adversity has been an important quality in my career.
Jeremy, you mentioned that your dad was a hard worker. What folks do for a living?
My dad, he's an entrepreneur as well. And so he builds and operates franchise hotels. Marriott hotels. That's not what he was doing then. It was a second career. His first career in the early 90s ended, and he ventured into something new. But I just remember, and it's interesting, being one of 5 children, the second oldest. My older sister was 18 months older. Like, we knew the Andruses growing up without 2 nickels to rub together. And then my dad made money, and I look at my younger siblings who had just a very different upbringing. And I was talking to my dad as I drove to the airport yesterday, and we were talking about how do you raise children and ensure that they've got not a sense of entitlement, but a recognition that they've got to earn, like what my wife and I have done. We've earned it, and it's not theirs. And so we were having that conversation, and we were sort of feeling nostalgic about some of the early years of my life in Minnesota. And we were talking about building our garage. Like, early on, my dad had this old Datsun, and he would remove the battery on cold nights and put it in the mudroom so he could start the car the next morning. And I remember one summer we said, we're going to build a garage, and we finished in the winter. And I remember him like hammering these shake shingles to the top of the garage and slipping off the back and like rolling into a bank of snow. And these memories are important. I didn't know differently, but I look back now and I admire my dad for how he worked. And I didn't understand that I was learning from his example, and that just became part of my DNA.
Excellent. Could you just give us a little bit of background about your schooling, where you went to college, and what you did, kind of during college? Did you work?
I always worked. So I paid for my own college, and that's something that, fortunately, my parents told me very early on that I was going to have to pay for college, and so I worked leading up to it, and I cut thousands of lawns to save up. And when I was in college, I always worked. And so I did my undergrad at BYU in Utah. And then I left, and I worked for 4 years. I was a management consultant. And then I did some like wacky things. And I'll leave it at that for now. But then I went back to Harvard Business School. And I had decided when I was probably 13 or 14 years old that I wanted to go to Harvard Business School. And I did it because we had a family friend who was the CEO of Black & Decker, ran Black & Decker for 28 years before they merged it with Stanley. And I admired him, and I looked at his career, and I was just very impressed by him. So he had gone to Harvard Business School, and he had also grown up in a home without a lot of means. And so I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I did apply to Harvard Business School, and I got rejected. And I said, okay, I'm going to apply again next year. And I was able to get in touch with the dean of the business school. I was able to finagle 15 minutes of his time. So I flew back to Boston for 15 minutes and had a fairly short conversation. And I ended it by saying, thank you for your advice. I just want you to know, I decided 15 years ago I was going to Harvard Business School, and I am going to apply year after year after year. And so when you're tired of reading my application, that may be the moment that you let me in. But for my purposes, sooner is better than later. And I worked really hard. I repositioned, and I got in the next year. And so that was just like, now, honestly, I can tell you, having gone there, it wasn't that big of a deal. But it's just, it was a goal that I had set, and I was committed to getting there.
Excellent, man. That's great. I hate to ask you this, but you mentioned wacky things, and I'm just curious what kind of wacky things you might have done.
You know what? My career for about 10 years was all over the place. Like if I showed you the logos of things I did, you would scratch your head and say, this poor guy. Like
Yeah.
it's perplexing, but I really wanted to find something I loved. And so I just kept trying new things. So for about 8 months, I day traded stocks full time in the late 90s. And, for anyone who remembers, like 97, 98, 99, it's like internet stocks are going crazy. And I turned the $25,000 that I had left over from cutting lawns and didn't spend on college tuition in Top Rom and stuff like that. I took it and I started day trading it, and I turned it into $2.5 million.
Nice.
And I wouldn't tell you that number if the outcome was actually kind of sad for me. So I lost it all day trading. And then I actually lost $200,000 more than I started with. And it took me 10 years. It took me 10 years to pay it back. And so day trading was honestly for me, and I know a lot of people day trade, and it was a ton of fun at first. It became this all-consuming obsession, and it nearly ruined me. I mean, like I was sleeping like 2 or 3 hours a night, waking up at 3 a.m, wanting to know what was going on in Hong Kong and the Asian exchanges, and then the European exchanges, then the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange opened. And before it all came crashing down, I just said, this is bad for me. Like I'm obsessed. I might say addicted. It was all consuming. And I realized I wasn't really creating any value anywhere. I wasn't building anything. I was just getting between trades and trying to make, a few $100, $1,000, 20 times a day. And I remember the moment where E-Trade, who gave me a lot of margin debt to trade with, called me and said, we're closing your account. You owe us $200,000. And I'm like, oh, geez. It was such a hard moment for me. I remember my heart was racing. What do I do? Okay, how do I pay rent? And I specifically remember telling myself, if this doesn't kill me, I'm going to learn from it. And it almost killed me. It was pretty devastating, but there were lessons to be learned from it. And that really, I did a lot of things in my career. After that, I developed real estate as an entrepreneur. I started a frozen beverage supply business, and I was very committed to a few things. Number one, I wanted to find what really inspired me and motivated me. And so I wanted to find my passion. I wanted to enjoy what I did. I wanted to learn, and I had to step back and realize that if it's only about the money, then I will be unhappy and I won't really learn along the way. So I wanted to learn, but I especially wanted to learn from my mistakes. And I often say that can't make every mistake in life, but you better not make the same mistake twice. And so I used all of these experiences truly as an opportunity to be introspective. And I write these things down. Like I remember going through a tough moment at Skull Candy towards the end of my tenure there, and just saying, okay, what is there to be learned? And I am a big believer. There's very little to learn in success, unfortunately. It's like, how do you learn when things are going so well? And there's a lot to be learned either in failure or in adversity. And so, embracing those experiences and deciding that things that are hard and lessons that feel painful in the moment are usually the things that make you great over time. And there's this great book that I read a handful of years ago. It's called Solve for Happy. And it's by this, I think he's of Egyptian descent, this guy named Mo Gaudet. And he's got this, he runs this Google X, which is like these moonshot, like really interesting, far-fetched ideas of innovation. And he went through a very, very tough moment in his life. And it was hard. Like he was reeling in depression and he was sad. And he talked about how experiences shape us and they make us they make us strong. And he did all this research where, and he went and he talked to people that had lived through really, really hard things. And he said, every single one of them, he would close by asking the question, if you could erase that experience from your life and you had to erase everything that it brought to you in terms of your learning, who you are, would you do it? And he said, down to the very last person, there's not a single one who said, I would take an eraser and I'd erase that from my life. And I think that had a very profound impact on me, not just in terms of looking back and learning, but I had a moment at Traeger in 2018 that was challenging, like really was tough. And it was the first time that I was able to, in the middle of a moment that felt like adversity, actually embrace that moment and decide what I was going to learn from it. That was very different from going through difficult challenges and hating them in the moment and just saying, I just got to get out of this. And so I think there's something to be said for, and it's not masochism. It's not like pain for the desire to feel pain. And by the way, if I could avoid all future adversity, I would. I know it's coming. I mean, like I'm an entrepreneur. I've got 6 young children. Like adversity happens in life. And so I think I look at it and say, if my attitude is positive, and even when I'm wincing a little bit because it's hard, if I can decide that I'm going to turn it into a positive, I've just found that that's a better way to go through trials than hating them.
Yeah. Jeremy, I'm looking at all the people on the screen and everybody's listening very intensely. So I got to ask you a couple of questions. You mentioned that in 2018 that you had a tough time at Traeger. Can you describe that? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I would say my first year at Traeger was probably the worst year of my career. And that was back in early 2014. And I actually later wrote an article in Harvard Business Review that it talks about turning around a toxic culture. And it was painful. But I was doing it with people I enjoyed. And so we were able to build something. We started to really grow in 2015, the back half of 15. And then we had a few years of like just magical growth. And we got 2018 and things kind of turned. We had a ton of low-cost competition come into the market, a lot of knockoff brands. Steel got really expensive in China, where we were building product. We were, the foreign exchange was up, transportation was expensive. And I look at it now and say, like, transportation is expensive today. It's insane today. Back then it had doubled over 2017. And so we had just sold more than half of our business to a financial partner. And right as they invested, our business went sideways. And I think it was painful for 2 reasons. Number one, we just taken a bunch of money from an investor and I didn't want to disappoint them. The other is that when you live through this moment of you can do no wrong and things turn sideways a little bit, you don't know how to get out. Like you can be in a tailspin and some brands don't make it out of that. And I remember sitting with my team in probably June, July of 18 and saying, hey guys, this is an intriguing problem. We've been a hot brand. This brand built on innovation. We're battling low-cost competition. Our cost inputs have gone through the roof. So what's the right answer here? At Harvard Business School, the way you learn is through case studies. There are no textbooks. Every class is a case study. And I love that as a way of learning, because you actually get to learn from real life situations. And sometimes they turn out well, and sometimes they turn out poorly. And I remember saying to my team, we've got to embrace this, because if this is just a burden, we're a deer in the headlights, we're not going to solve these problems. But number two, this, like, a case study is going to be written about this one day. And there are case studies of failure, and there are case studies of success. And the way in which we battle through this will write the outcome. And interestingly, fortunately, we have a great financial partner that really shares my vision for the business. But we said, what got us here? Innovation and product and brand. So typically, in a business with a New York-based private equity financial partner, when your margins start to get squeezed and you're not making as much money as you did, they say, spend less, invest less. And we did just the opposite. When we sat down, we said, we've got to double down on product quality and innovation, and we've got to double down on brand. And we did that. And we really, really raced innovation to market in 2019. And suddenly the brand started to turn again. And it's been incredible since then. And so that was, it's sort of interesting, because I've always been a person that I've always had a healthy sense of confidence, but I also know that confidence is built through experience. And, and I was going to say I also have my own insecurities, and I have like a mixture of like just healthy anxiety, which gives me energy to do more and to build. And when we got through 2019, it felt really good for me. I mean, I'd been a CEO for a long time, but I didn't know if we'd make it out of it or not successfully. And so, like, when you go through these tough moments and you solve them the right way, every time you do it, you get this like this feeling of self-confidence. And then the next time you go through something hard, it's probably going to be different. Unfortunately, patterns in business aren't perfectly the same, but you see some patterns. But more than anything, you believe, in your heart of hearts that you have the ability to solve these things. And so I wrote an article a couple of years ago in Forbes magazine, which is something I enjoy doing. I'm a contributor. And I talked about, I led off with this experience of being at base camp of a mountain in central Mexico. We had climbed up to 14,000 feet, and we were getting ready to do the climb up to 19,000 feet up a glacier. And it was a tough night. We went to bed at 6. I couldn't sleep. I'm having stomach problems. It's cold outside. The restroom is like, go find a rock somewhere. And it's getting close to midnight where we were going to start our climb. And I haven't slept for a minute. And I remember like getting back in bed of this hut and saying, what am I doing here? Like, I could be anywhere. I could be in my warm bed at home with a great shower and a toilet and a cupboard full of food. And I realized that I like being outside of my comfort zone, because it's where I become stronger. And so I wrote this article about, I've got this adventure group, and every year we do something wacky. And right before COVID hit, we were dropped into the Amazon for 6 days. And it was the 6 longest days of my life. I could not wait for it to end. We caught our food and we cooked it, and otherwise we went hungry. And I look back on these experiences, and the Amazon was like maybe a little bit too much. But these moments of just being slightly uncomfortable, I look back and I view them positively in terms of who I am.
Wow. I got to ask you, you mentioned insecurities, and we look at you and we look at the success that you've had with Traeger and the success that you had at Skull Candy and other things that you've done. How would somebody like you with your success have insecurities?
Oh man, you know what? It's a good question. I think I think we all have areas where we are more confident, and then areas where we have like we just have moments where we have to prove it to ourselves. And there's no question. Like every time I get to a top of a mountain, I realize that number one, there's a higher mountain to climb, and the journey and getting there was more important than where I landed. And that as human beings, if our mission is to better ourselves, we just acknowledge that humans have weaknesses and we have insecurities, and it matters less the destination, but matters more sort of how we address them. And early on as a CEO, I wasn't. I was very much in a fake it till you make it, because I'm running a business that I had no business running. At Skull Candy, I was doing like hotel development before that, and frozen beverages, and now I'm building headphones in China, and I'd never been there before. And there were 1,000 things I didn't know, and I knew that. And in my experience at Skull Candy, I faked it, and I do less of that these days. I try to be more honest with where I just don't know, where I feel uncertain. I find that when you reach out to a mentor, when I reach out to my board, when I reach out to my management team and say something like, "Hey, I'm really nervous about this thing. I don't quite know how to solve this." That's when everyone says, let's contribute. Let's get in on this thing. And people that make others believe they know all of the answers usually don't find this sort of spirit of camaraderie and sort of just being part of a team. And I think there's a healthy balance between being confident and having swagger, and being vulnerable where you should be. And I actually find that running a business is just like, it's just life. It's you can think about what you do from 9 to 5 is compartmentalized, and what you do the rest of the time is personal. But the reality is that we spend so much time working, that building relationships that matter is important at work, the same way that it is in your community and your neighborhood and your family. And I think being willing to recognize where to be vulnerable on certain things. People actually, like, good people don't poke at those vulnerabilities. They step in and they say, "How can I help?"
Very good. Jeremy, there's a lot of questions out there, and for sure I've got a lot of questions as well, but I think it'd be appropriate if we just take a little break here. And Carly, why don't you go through some of the questions for Jeremy, and let's hear what the participants want to know about.
Okay, we do have quite a few. So I'm going to kind of pick and choose. All right, so let's start with a COVID question, because that's always a good one. How did Traeger pivot when COVID first hit, and was it and as it progressed? And this is a two-part. How is Traeger being impacted by supply chain issues?
Oh boy. Let me do the first one. I'm more passionate about the first and the second piece, only because we're like in the middle of the supply chain challenges right now. It was when COVID hit, it was a little scary, and it's sort of interesting everyone looks at the CEO like he or she really knows what they're doing, and the reality is sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. And there are problems that you have to solve. And I remember driving our first daughter home from the hospital and just saying, "I have no idea what I'm doing." Like, did my parents knew, didn't they? Like, and they didn't even have Google. Like, I'm Googling, how do you change a diaper? And when COVID hit, it was a little scary. I mean, we had 400 employees around the world, and you feel, in some moments you feel this aspiration to build, and in others you sort of look around and you say, oh my gosh, like I'm in charge here, and if we don't succeed, I can't make payroll. And that was a scary moment. We have debt on the business. We needed to pay our lenders. We needed to pay our factories. Um, but most importantly, we needed to pay our people. And so we made some hard decisions. Now, I'm proud to say we didn't let a single person go, but we stopped hiring. We stopped spending on marketing. We stopped all capital expenditures, and we said, if all we do is tread water through this thing, then that's winning for us. And the other thing that we just thought was really important is that, like, when COVID hit, no one was thinking about buying grills. I mean, it's so, like, toilet paper, Purell, what's going on? Am I going to die? I mean, like, it was like we just didn't know. And I sat with the team and I said, we have a community. Like, this is our community here in the office. And this is an important community. We've got to look out for each other. But equally importantly, there's the Traegerhood. There's a Traeger community. And cooking in your backyard is something that is going to bring people joy in a complicated world. And so we said, we're not going to think about sales. We're going to think about how can we be part of the solution? How can we add to people's experiences of being quarantined? And some really great innovation came out of that in terms of, we could no longer go around and teach cooking classes. So we started something called Traeger Kitchen Live. And, we did it every week. We did it for a week, and we couldn't go and film it because we weren't allowed to travel. And so we sent camera equipment, and we did the first one with Diva Q, with Danielle. And she set it up, and her husband's like holding the camera, and she's cooking, and it was super raw out of the gate, but we've done it every week since. And we did it because we wanted people to feel some satisfaction in being quarantined with their family. And it really led to some innovative thinking. And I think we got credit with our community for not being opportunistic. There was nothing about sales. Like, we didn't try and sell a grill. We simply tried to provide content that made their lives better. It was a unique moment in supply. Now, what we learned was that the first 30 days, no one bought a grill, but a lot of them bought pellets. And it's like, I need my water, my Purell, my toilet paper, and my Traeger pellets. But 30 days out, like, the trend just became very clear. We're not eating in restaurants. The money that we saved for our family vacation, we're not going to spend this year. And so they started spending on home improvement and, inside the house, the patio back. And so outdoor cooking really took off. And unfortunately, we had brought our forecast way down. We said, like, last thing we want is to be stuck with inventory. And we have been hand to mouth on inventory since that day, since middle of April. And so we made a lot of investments last year so that we could deliver inventory. But there's certain things that we don't control that are just really painful. I mean, like, I was reading the Wall Street Journal this morning, like, front page, first article on the app was about the port in Shenzhen, which is like, it's being crushed by COVID. Demand is up 50%. And we have inventory sitting places that we can't move it. And electronics is an important part of our product. And boy, we have some electronic components that have 700-day lead times. It's like, how do you plan 700 days out? It's like, no, I need it like right now. And so we are spending a lot of time and a ton of money just trying to keep inventory flowing. And I would say it's gone better than I would have expected. And, we've just made some investments that don't make a ton of economic sense, but when you're a brand and you're growing and your retail partnerships are so important, and you realize that your retailers, your specialty retailers, put food on the table by the brands that they sell, then it's been something we've been doing. I think it's going better than expected, and certainly better than a lot of other brands that I know of.
Great. That's good. It's good for you guys. So this is another question. I think this is from South Korea. Traeger has been very successful primarily in the US. Do you have a plan to expand your business into international markets, especially South Korea?
Well, so I would say a couple of things. Number one, we've been incubating some international markets for about 5 years now. We are, and if there are any Canadians, no disrespect in this comment, we sort of view Canada as like, we understand Canada. We don't consider that an international market, even though it is. We've recently taken over distribution there, and we go direct in Canada. But outside of North America, our investments have been primarily in Europe. And so we opened an office in Copenhagen to run our European operation, and we've got a good business there. We're doing very well in Australia, New Zealand, and we're being very selective in the markets that we choose. And at Skull Candy, we were in 80 countries around the world, and we were in 100,000 points of sale. And Traeger is very different. Traeger is a solution that needs it needs education. And so, and it also needs the fuel to follow the grill. Otherwise, it's like buying a car and not being able to fill it up. And so we've chosen a narrower and a deeper strategy in international markets. Korea's a market that we've looked at. South Korea has a very vibrant e-commerce channel, and we think there's an opportunity there. We're not sure that we have quite the right product for that market. Mostly because it's it tends to be space constrained living environments, and so we're innovating on some smaller format grills that would be more appropriate. It's a market that we've looked at, and I'm sure we'll get there over the next 4 or 5 years.
That's great. That sounds good. This is a question from Danielle. What was the top 3 things that you corrected for the better when investing in your employees after having an employee you invested in leave and become your competition? Sorry.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I would say first of all, my philosophy around business is that it starts with culture and it starts with people. And I remember early in my career where when I was an employee, sometimes I had good experiences and other times I had bad experiences. Sometimes Sunday night rolls around and I'm excited and like feeling energy to go back Monday, and other times I feel a pit in my stomach. And I attribute that to culture. And it's like there's this phrase that people are a number. It's like when you feel like a number in a business, it's a cliche phrase. There's a reason for that. It's because you're not treated poorly, but you're not treated like a human being. You're not treated like your career matters as much as the leader of the organization and your livelihood and your family. And so I believe that building business starts first with people, and it's building a culture. And I think culture is about 2 things. It's about connecting your vision with a set of cultural values that teach people how to sort of think and really reflect what your business stands for. And the second is that it's intended to motivate you. It's intended to really inspire you to be your best self. And I remember a professor at Harvard Business School, a guy named Clayton Christensen, passed a couple of years ago, but he became a friend long after business school. He wrote a book called How Will I Measure My Life? And it's like it was a really profound book for me. But one of the things that he talks about is management being a noble profession. And it's noble it's not noble because you're signing people's paychecks every other week. That's important. But it's noble because when people show up, you create an environment that makes them their best selves. And it gives them opportunity and it stretches them and they leave feeling like a better person. And so, they're a better husband, wife, mom, dad, community member, church member, whatever it is that they do. And I really believe in that principle that, if I'm the only guy having fun as CEO, like what kind of a legacy is that? And so for me, it starts with culture. I think the second piece is a willingness to really, really articulate a vision for what you're trying to build. It's easy to forget that you need people who are sort of head down, like in a role, getting things done and doing them well. But those people lose motivation unless they understand how they contribute to the whole, how they contribute to the team, like what the overarching vision is. And when you always bring people back, regardless of what role they have, you bring them back to the culture and the vision, they just feel a greater sense of the purpose of the organization. And the third thing is it's really about your willingness to invest in your people. And I've just found a little bit of investment goes so far. When someone feels like they're just an asset to you, and it's like, just do the same thing, but do it better and do it faster. It's what you get paid to do, but it's not a terribly satisfying feeling. It's not nearly as satisfying as when you actually believe that your employer wants to make you better. And they're going to find little ways to mentor you, to train you, to give you a skill that makes you better. The value as an employer, well beyond what they learn, is the fact that it builds loyalty because they value that. They believe that you care about them. And so those are sort of three of the things that I think about. And, it's I've worked for different types of leaders in my career. And, early on, it's interesting to think back to, those people that sort of pound their fist for results. It's like, you got to get more efficient. Margins are down. We got to sell more. You got to, and as opposed to stepping back and realizing that the output of business is not what you pound your fist over. If you do the right thing by your people, they actually create better output. So it's always interesting to me when organizations they demand results, but then they don't really show that they care for their people.
That's great. That's really great. And this is one of a pretty good question. Since the fuel needs to follow the grill, how much of a challenge is it to balance a company with both an independent distributor network and direct to customer distribution?
So, boy, that's an interesting one. When we bought Traeger, it was 40% direct to consumer. And it was kind of a nightmare. Our brand was on sale every day. We had 45 stores around the country, and we had a very vibrant e-commerce business, but we were on sale all the time. And we were actually multiple times a week. And I actually remember going to a trade show. Actually, it was the ACE trade show in Houston in February of 2014. I was like 30 days on the job. And I realized that we had a problem. Like we were actually selling product to our end consumer for less than what our dealers could buy it for. And I remember just like getting bruised on my chest by people poking and saying, "I can't believe you're." I'm like, whoa. This is news to me. I'm like 3 weeks here. And so we stopped. I shut down all of our 45 stores, and I said our website's not in sale anymore. And the 45 store revenue, of course, went to zero within 6 months because that's how long it took to shut it down. And when we started charging full price on our website, it ground to a halt as well. And so the the direct-to-consumer business we've chosen to de-emphasize mostly because we felt like the value of partnership with retailers who could welcome people and like personally greet them and walk them through what a Traeger is was super high. And that was a more personalized way than a website as a vehicle for both education and selling. And, we chose to, at the time it was free shipping and we were paying people's taxes, like literally, like we were personally paying sales tax, personally meaning the business. And so we shut that all down. And there's certain things that make sense for direct to consumer. There's some accessories that just don't move that fast. We don't have rubs and sauces everywhere. And so we view it as a channel that fills in the gap for the fact that no one retailer has all of our products. But and by the way, the fuel actually doesn't. The economics of fuel don't make sense direct to consumer because you're paying to ship a 20-pound bag that costs $19, but costs like $13 to ship direct to someone's house. So it plays a role, but I just always believe that you've got to balance your channels, and we've got a very broad set of channels. And what's important is that they work in tandem, and there's like this symbiotic relationship where a rising tide makes them all better. And and they're all performing. And one example that I think about is we started selling to Williams-Sonoma about 3 years ago. Just really believing that, Williams-Sonoma is very much a sort of a women's retailer, 35 to 50, 55 years old. And we view this as an opportunity to message to women, because we felt like outdoor cooking brands didn't speak to women. And we also learned in our research that when a husband and a wife are purchasing a Traeger together, as opposed to the husband's calling saying, "Can I have permission to buy this, $1,000 grill?" They spend more money because they both value the purchase. And so Williams-Sonoma was an opportunity. It was a channel opportunity that we viewed strategically in our business. And we always take channel very seriously. And, we haven't added a major retailer for 6 years now. But we have turned every major retailer down because we just have this belief that fewer partnerships, but deeper partnerships ultimately creates more loyalty on both sides.
I agree with that. I'm going to pass it on over to Art so we can finish some of the questions. Go ahead, Art.
Thank you, Carly. Jeremy, as you can see, there's a lot of questions out there and a tremendous amount of interest, but I do have a few that I want to make sure we get in the time for. You talked quite a bit about culture already, but you also probably have a set of values in the company that are important to you and to the team. Could you share what your values are?
Yeah. So look, it's always been interesting to me when I was a management consultant out of college, and I walk in these big corporations and I would see these posters in break rooms that were supposed to be like aspirational, like this integrity and this eagle flying high. And like, does anyone, like, this is so cliche. And when integrity has to be a stated value in an organization, you have a problem. It's like, there are certain values that are just fundamental. It's like good, honest human values. And so we have 5 values, and we spent a lot of time early on determining what these values are. And we sort of Traegerize them, and we speak to them often. But one is called Stand in the Fire, which is about like really, it's about innovation. It's questioning status quo. One is called Test Kitchen Mentality. That's how we invest in people and we bring them along their careers. One is called No Reservations. That is our obsession for getting things right for our customers so that our retail partners and our end consumers have positive experiences. One is called Done, Done, Done. And that means it's like this. And I remember where I got this. I was talking to a board member who had built Under Armour, and I sent him something. He said, "Tell me about what you sent." And I described, and he said, "Great, it's done. Is it done, done, done?" Like, what do you mean? And he said, did you do this? Did you think of this? And I'm like, tell you what, delete that document. I'm going to go back and spend more time on it. And this notion of done, done, done is that if you want to deliver a positive customer experience, it starts by delivering on the details internally. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, the last one is called Cook Together. And we just have this fundamental belief that at Traeger, there are no individual heroes. This is a team sport, and we cook together. We work together as a team. So those are our 5 values. We talk about them constantly. We recognize people constantly. We have a program that allows peers to recognize their other peers for very specific ways that they live the values. And I don't know that a day goes by that I don't hear one of those values mentioned somehow.
Excellent. The move from Oregon to Utah probably was not easy. And then in trying to understand the timeline, you have something called Traeger Independence Day. And maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about that move, and then maybe a little bit about what Traeger Independence Day is.
Yes, I can. So it's funny. I had to be somewhat veiled when I talked about this for a few years, because the guy that we bought the business from was not my favorite human being in the world. He was I made an investment, a minority investment in the business. And it turns out this gentleman was a fairly aggressive, abusive human being. And it was rough. And I remember sitting down with him and saying, this isn't going to work. One of us has to go. I respect you as an entrepreneur, but as a person, not so much. And we were able to buy the rest of the business from him. I brought in a partner from a financial partner. And that happened on June 17th of 2014. And that was our Independence Day. We were independent from someone who I'll just sort of call him a tyrant. And fortunately, my my non-disparagement agreement has long since worn off. But I'll just leave it as we saw the world very differently. And actually, I remember leaving this ACE trade show 2 hours into it and calling this guy, Keith, and saying, Keith, we got a problem. Like, do you know what our customers are saying right now? Like this and this and this and this and this. And I'll never forget his response. This is a moment I realized that it wasn't going to work. His response was, Jeremy, don't listen to these whiny customers. And like, okay, you and I see the world differently. And so we celebrated Traeger Independence Day. It's just, it's the day that we broke free from the mothership. It's like 1776 breaking, no offense to my Irish friend, but from Great Britain. And that's the day that we broke free from Keith Parrish, and we celebrate it. And actually, we're celebrating it next Friday.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How about that move from Oregon to Utah? How tough was that?
Hard. Look, it was really hard. We had some tough moments up there, and one of them I described in this HBR article where, an employee that we had let go burned a truck down, and it was that whole experience and the time that I spent in Oregon was a hard one, and I eventually decided that I wasn't going to change people. I needed to change the team. Like, people, like, for better or for worse, we kind of are who we are. If you think back to even early childhood, although we express ourselves differently, our DNA is the same, and we think with a similar set of values. And so it was hard. And it wasn't only hard being up there, but in as much as it wasn't working, it was still really hard for me to stand in front of, 100 employees and say, we're leaving, and we're going to take good care of you. We're not leaving today, but over the next year, we're going to move from Oregon to Utah, and we're not going to invite most of you to join us. And it's hard because, again, the culture sucked. It was toxic. It was painful. But I tend to believe that most people are good, and we had to let 100 families go, and so we did our best to treat them respectfully. And it happened over the course of a year. And most of them left and found jobs, over the course of the year. And some we paid nice severance packages to at the end. But that whole experience was hard. And fortunately, ignorance is bliss. I wouldn't have gotten into Traeger had I known that we had to do all those things. And so I'm glad that we fought through it. And one of the things that I'm just mostly proud of is our team. And anyone who's interacted with hopefully the sales team, you've had just a great experience, because I think there's a culture of service that and wanting to do the right thing that pervades our organization. And I sometimes step back and say, I lead this thing, but I'm also just like really happy and grateful to be part of the team and to be associated with it. And that's like when you build a team of people that actually just like they not only enjoy the mission of the organization, what they're building, but they enjoy each other the way that I do. It's really it's a nice moment to be a part of.
That's good. I've got just one other question, and then Carly, we can ask a couple more, I think. But if there was one piece of advice that you would think would be valuable to anybody on the phone, on the call right now, on the Zoom link, what would that one piece of advice be?
Oh my gosh, boy, how do you boil it down to one? I'll tell you one thing that that I've thought about more recently, and there's all sorts of advice around strategy, team building, culture building, product innovation, but like the life advice that I think about a lot is to enjoy the journey. The destination is the journey, and I realize that in the first part of my career, I felt so much pressure to become something. It's like internal pressure. Like no one ever put pressure on me. Like so much pressure to become something and someone and to succeed that I didn't really enjoy it. And I remember becoming CEO of Skull Candy and getting to that moment, something I wanted so much, and realizing that nothing changed. And I kind of said, I wish I hadn't been quite so, focus is a wrong word, but like, it's just like, just feeling so much of the weight of these experiences that I couldn't enjoy them. And I found that when I enjoy the journey and when my career becomes less about me and more about the people around me, it's more joyful. And it's and that's interesting because there's nothing nefarious about wanting your business to succeed, about caring about your career, your livelihood. They're just, I think they're naturally self-serving, but it's not mutually exclusive of actually caring just as much that everyone around you is having a good experience. And I learned that in a very defined moment 4 years ago, and my career changed. And that's when I realized you do it for other people. And like, interestingly, that's when you enjoy it more yourself.
Cool. Very good. Carly, you want to try to get at a couple of questions, but we got to respect everybody's time as well. You're muted.
Muted. There we go. Okay.
That's never happened before, right?
It never happens to me. I'm very, very into the conversation. Okay, so we have throughout your working career, which job would you say was the most interesting and why?
You know what? I got to tell you, the most interesting job I've ever had is the current one, and it literally, it goes back to this belief that if you can actually find satisfaction in the problems you're solving, they get really interesting. And when problems feel like problems, I remember calling my dad one day and just saying, my gosh, like we have problems everywhere. And he was an entrepreneur. It's like, Dad, it's just like problem after, like we just can't get out of our own way. His response was, welcome to business. It's like, if it were smooth and frictionless and free flowing, then everyone would be good at it. Everyone would own a business. And so the joy that I find in what I'm doing right now is that there's no pressure for anything than to find like really interesting solutions to the problems that we face.
That's excellent. And then just a real quick follow-up just to that, kind of perfect for it. How was your family support to you during your various crises that you faced?
You know, boy, I have, first of all, the most supportive wife in the world. And we have 6 kids, 8 years apart, between 5 and 13 years old. And she's Wonder Woman. I mean, like her energy, she gets more things done. She finds time to take care of the family, do service. And she has been the world's best support. And there is no question, this whole thing, it wouldn't work without her. And my children are like, Traeger's a family hobby for my children, but they don't yet realize what it takes to get there. For them, it's like it's a cool grilling experience in the backyard, but they're just good young kids. But I have really come to believe in, you know, careers and owning a business, running a business, it's a team sport. It's like you can't do it without without the support. And by the way, and that's reciprocal as well, which is, you know, early in my career, it was unintentionally about me. My wife had a career when we got married, and she was very successful. And actually, I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, so she put the down payment on her first house. And she bought a business, became an entrepreneur, and 3 kids in said, I just can't do this well anymore, and chose to be a stay-at-home mom. But she has some real hobbies in the community. She's very involved in refugee service and in local things. And I realized that just because I went to work, it didn't mean that that was like the thing that we rallied around in our house. And so I have come to really love and appreciate everything that she cares about just as much as she does mine. And that to me is like, it's a team effort. And there's a lot of strength to be derived from not going out to fight the good fight by yourself. And so that support has just been tremendous.
Amazing.
That's excellent.
Jeremy, I'm not even sure how to thank you appropriately for the time that you've given us and so many different nuggets of information from all of us on the call and all that'll watch the video afterwards. Jeremy, thank you so much. Thank you for being candid. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for your passion, your knowledge, and we're just blessed to be able to have heard you for the last hour.
My pleasure. I enjoyed the conversation. I wish you guys the best. Reach out anytime. Take care.
Take care, everybody.
Okay, so for the next Lunching with Leaders, join us to meet my pick for Lunching with Leaders, Costello's own Rocky Vitale. Rocky is the Executive Vice President of Store Operations for Costello's Ace Hardware. He oversees all facets of store operations, facilities, loss prevention, merchandising, warehousing, distribution, and project management for all of the Costello's 40-plus stores. He's an expert in operations, financial controls, and payroll, but knows how to deliver the right message with the kind and servant heart. He's known around these parts as the man that gets things done, and he's one of my favorite people. Please join us next time on June 25th to meet Frank Rocky Vitale and hear one of the greatest laughs around. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You know the deal. Spread the word. Tell your friends and family, neighbors and coworkers. We'd love to have them. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye for now.